With the offseason set to begin and the Chicago Bears expected to be one of the more active teams this offseason, we're going to look at pending free agents from the Chicago Bears that they could let walk away for nothing in the 2023 offseason. We're also going to look at an interesting trade rumor for another Bears wide receiver. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
All right, Bears fans, welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central. I'm the host here, Haize. You can follow me right off the top at CEO Haize if you choose to do so. But with free agency set to begin and the Bears already making a cap cut, and we'll see if they make further ones of that, we're going to actually take a look at some pending Bears free agents that they couldn't let walk away for absolutely nothing in the 2023 offseason. And first up, we're going to talk about Angelo Blackson. Now, this is a defensive tackle that played for us last season. He actually started off the season as a starter next to Justin Jones, but lost his starting job to Armon Watts after only 3 games. And then he was a healthy scratch in a few games on top of that. Didn't seem like, he really fit in what the Bears wanted to do. And he just wasn't a scheme fit for the most part of that. Now, with that being said, he'll still be on the books for some money, but he is a player that could be just walked away for nothing in this offseason. And I don't necessarily think that that's the wrong idea. Next up, we're going to talk about linebacker Matt Adams. Now, when you look at him, was a reserve last season. When you look at like him compared to like Joe Thomas and things like that, he's probably all but going. He didn't have very much production. And then when you look at also Nicholas Morrow and other players that are also set to hit free agency, we already expect the Chicago Bears to really improve that front seven overall. Matt Thomas is probably a goner as well in this 2023 offseason. If you leave it up to me, I think he's going to end up being gone. Next up, and this is a more interesting one. This is tight end Ryan Griffin. Now, he came in and was always supposed to be the backup to Cole Kmet, but considering he didn't play very much, and when he did play, he looked really good as a blocker. Didn't do much in the passing game at all. He only had 4 catches for 26 yards over the course of the whole season for the Chicago Bears. And so, yeah, tight end isn't our biggest need this offseason, which could mean bringing back the veteran depth piece in Ryan Griffin. But the Bears also, depending on how many other draft picks they get, could take a look at bringing in a younger tight end that kind of fits more as a complement to Cole Kmet in both the passing and running game. Now, me personally, Ryan Griffin is not one of the players that I'm necessarily hoping the Bears just let walk away for anything. It could be a calculated risk that they have to look over what they feel like they can do. There are some pretty solid tight end prospects in this draft, not necessarily ones that will be a threat to at all take Cole Kmet's position away, but when you look at bringing them in as a depth piece and a backup tight end, you can find some pretty quality ones in this draft. So the Bears could look to go younger in that area, or they could bring back the veteran tight end that, like I said, did some solid things as a blocker, but didn't really do much in the passing game. And if the Bears are really trying to expand that passing game this season like we think and hope they'll do, they may try to bring in somebody who's more of a complement to Cole Kmet, who can kind of emulate some of the things he can do in both the pass and the blocking game. So we'll see what the Bears do with that one. Next one up is the one that I was super excited about Byron Pringle coming into this season for the Chicago Bears. When you look at players that like talk, and this is why I always say you can fix your mouth to say anything. He said all the right things in the offseason. His mindset, everything, just seemed like a player that was going to come in and be a weapon for the Chicago Bears, and that just wasn't the reality of it. When you look at it, yeah, he missed a lot of games because of health concerns and things like that, but he only totaled 10 receptions the whole season for the Chicago Bears, 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. Listen, yes, he was limited by injury. He only played in 11 games, but Ryan Poles gave him a prove-it deal. And it's hard to make an argument that Byron Pringle proved anything in the time that he was a Chicago Bear. Now, again, considering that I have said that I don't know if the Bears are going to necessarily make the big moves at wide receiver, but I do think that they will make a move to bring in some type of talent here in that. And because of that, we could see Byron Pringle be just walk away in free agency. Let the market dictate. We'll see what happens with him. Like, again, Byron Pringle didn't do anything for me that says to me that he has earned a spot on this roster, an improved roster at all. It could be some cap reasons on why we bring him back, but I definitely think Byron Pringle is a candidate to be a player that the Bears probably just going to let walk away for free in free agency. Next up, Dan Cruikshank. Now, this is harder to really evaluate for me. He was brought in to play a specific role on defense and special teams, And, he had a solid reputation of being able to play solid safety, but he struggled with injuries during training camp and the regular season. He was limited. He only had one tackle on the whole season, in the 8 games that he played. So, again, he could be brought back on another 1-year deal. That could be something that the Bears do because their secondary seems to be pretty much set. And so they could bring him back, try to get another extended look at him, hope for health. But again, I think Cruikshank is a player that absolutely has the possibility of probably just letting walk away for free in free agency. Next one up, Dakota Dozier. Let him go. Just let him go. He came in to help the competitiveness in that the competition to choose your offensive line in training camp. But again, let him go. Let him go. He was out the whole season. Now, if you do think that he's going to come back and you think he can be a veteran depth piece, but again, we have so much work to do on that offensive line that to bring him back, I kind of look at like, I don't know, man. He could be part, in a reserve role. He could be part as another veteran to help that competition, depending on what else the Bears do for that offensive line. But Dozier, listen. Do we really want to bet on a player who couldn't play in Forest? I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think on that one. Next one up, Dante Pettis. Now, Dante Pettis, he has chemistry with Justin Fields. We saw that a little bit. He had some contributions. He had 19 catches for 245 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is better than what Byron Pringle gave us at any point last season. And I do think that there's a chance for him to come back and play for the Chicago Bears. He ended up being the wide receiver 2 for a little while just because of the injuries that we had. But I just don't know. He had a lot of drops last season. Didn't necessarily make any type of meaningful impact, I don't think. But again, it's really hard to evaluate our receiver situation because we, didn't pass the ball much. We had a terrible offensive line. We were the worst passing team in the NFL. So, there are some causes to think, hey, let's try to bring this guy back if we improve the offensive line as much as all of us hope that the Chicago Bears are going to do this offseason. The Bears could look to do some things with that and maybe keep him here. He's another player that I'm not necessarily looking at as a huge negative or positive as they do bring him back. I'm just not expecting much from him. But Ryan Poles can give one of his legendary prove-it deals to him, and we can see what Pettis brings. I think Pettis showed some flashes. I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, C-Dub was pretty high on him at one point after a game where he showed some things. But, we'll end up seeing. I definitely think he is a player, though, that could walk away for nothing. Now, next up, and before we go today, we're going to talk, as everyone knows, it's the offseason. The Bears have a clear need to improve certain areas, and wide receivers the Bears are going to be probably involved in every rumor for an available wide receiver this offseason, whether it's some factual things to it, whether it's just, them being used as a decoy plan to kind of up some asking prices. Every wide receiver that is in trade talks could be traded. The Chicago Bears names are going to be thrown out there. Now, the latest one is Courtland Sutton. Now, this is a wide receiver who played in Denver, and so played with the Broncos. Didn't have a terrible season. Now, he is dealing with some injury things. He had 64 receptions last season for 829 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, but again, it's not like he's the feature wired out there or anything. He just signed last offseason a 4-year, $60 million contract with the Denver Broncos, and $34 million of that is guaranteed. If I'm correctly, he was coming off an ACL tear, and so the Broncos didn't want to let him go, and so he comes back in. Now, when you look at it, he flashed some things, and I don't want to act like it was terrible, but the word is, and this came out from Lindsey Jones on the Audible podcast, said this: there's been some buzz around Denver. Could Sutton get traded? His name has been buzzing around a little bit as a guy who could maybe get moved. And the thing with this is why you're hearing the rumors about him possibly being moved is that with the way that his contract was written, if he's traded, he actually saves the Denver Broncos $7 million in cap space if he is moved. So he could be on his way out. And because I don't think that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears are going to necessarily make this a huge move for wide receiver this upcoming offseason, or it's not upcoming anymore. We are actively in the offseason, Haize. Wake up. So, with that, there is some things in a prove-it deal, or really wouldn't be a prove-it deal. You can bring them in, and it's not huge money. It's not extremely long-term money either. And it is money that the Bears could get out of if he doesn't necessarily turn out. Now, there is, some concern over, like, what are you then trading for a player that, while he didn't put up huge numbers, the flashes are there, right? And the fact that then the Bears would have him under control until 2024, so they can take a look at evaluating him over that time. And he's not old at all. He's 27 years old. So that still has some upside there, especially considering how there's some reason to think around that he is better than what he's flashed so far. Coming in with a role in which Justin Fields does need some weapons, absolutely. Could he be someone that the Bears take a look at? I don't necessarily. It really depends on what the asking price is. Now, there is potential that he could be moved and the Bears could buy low on him. But you got to also keep in mind, with a player that's 27 years old, that turns 28 in October, you don't want to give up any major draft capital for him. And if you find the right deal for him, he could be a net positive for the Chicago Bears. Now, I've said this before. I don't necessarily think the Bears are going to give up any more draft capital if it's not for a surefire number one. And let's be clear, Sutton is not a number one. I don't even think anybody would even make that argument that he has potential to be a number one. So because of that, I'm not necessarily sure. And I think, when you look at the Chase Claypool situation, it's kind of similar there. So I don't know if the Bears double down on two players in kind of the same way. It's just my opinion on it. But I wanted to talk about it because it is a rumor around here, and I'm sure you guys would have asked at some point. But like I said, I expect the Bears to be involved in every single wide receiver trade rumor that's out there this offseason. If there's a wide receiver that's on the trade market that's halfway decent, you're going to expect to hear the Bears' names rumored and possibly being interested. And we'll continue to cover it here. But that's it for today. Nothing left to talk about. Nothing left on there. If there's any other news that we'll drop, I'll drop. It's very simple how we do things over here at Chicago Bears Central. If news drops, we drop an episode. Pretty straightforward. But otherwise, if you want to stay in tune with us, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're on the YouTube side. You can also follow us at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave us a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag episodes, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. And like to end every episode on, bear down, guys. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.